If you're watching this video, you're about to get some info that can really separate you as a hooper. Especially as a less athletic and or shorter player, many times what keeps us off the court is being able to guard. This was me when I was younger, and it's millions of players around the globe who can kill it on offense, but on the other side of the ball, they're a liability. And I don't want this to limit anyone. I want every single player watching this to not only become a neutral defender, but really a lockdown defender, regardless of their height or athleticism. So in this video, we'll cover everything from defending post-ups to ISO situations to knowing tendencies and beyond. Let's get it. So first off, even if you're not a raw, explosive athlete, you can become a different type of athlete. Despite not being the tallest, most explosive, bounciest, etc., all of these guys in this video are athletes. There are far more qualities that go into it, like movement skill, so being able to change direction and move fluidly in all the different ways that we have to defensively. Strength, so human-to-human strength to withstand contact, positional strength to hit low positions, being able to contort your body through small spaces efficiently, maneuver around screens, and move super nimbly. And I've made a ton of content about these, but I just wanted to mention this because most players have a super fixed mindset and don't believe they'll ever get athletic when it's absolutely doable, especially in these more defense-specific qualities. And this is something we really build in my Lockdown Defensive program, which I'll talk about later. Anyways, one piece that we have to discuss first is the goal of defense and how that may change for you. Most players don't really understand what their goal is defensively, other than just not letting the other team score. Now, this is going to be different for every team, situation, player, etc. But here are some good goals to have as a less athletic player. 1, force the offense into shooting bad shots, which are usually contested mid-ranges, forced off the dribble threes, and even highly contested layups. Number 2 is just turning them off the dribble, especially sending them into what we call single gaps, which we'll talk about, or your help defense. Another one could be taking them off their line to the basket, even if it's just a little bit like right here. Also, just getting good contests on every shot, not allowing them too close to the rim, annoying them a bit to take them out of their rhythm, and speeding them up, because rarely do players play well at 110% speed. So it's not necessarily just staying in front and pressuring the whole time, which helps a lot to understand and take some pressure off of you as a defender, since most times we feel like we have to do this, which just isn't possible for less athletic defenders most times. So in situations like this, you got to think, hey, I'm not worried about a steal or pressure here, I just want to force a tough shot. So he takes an angle back and forces a long 3 instead of a drive by. Or here where Van Vliet is almost letting Luka go by because he knows he has help here and is sitting on that change of direction and step back, which is exactly what he doesn't want, and he ends up forcing a bad shot. And then if you're a bit undersized, I would say an additional goal would just be annoying the shit out of players. With a low center of mass, an ability to anticipate a bit better, being able to be down closer to the ball, many tall players hate being defended by pesky smaller players, so take advantage of it. Now, one big key here as we get into the technical side is being able to court map and understand where your single gaps, double teams, and help defense are. So in terms of these gaps that I mentioned, we have 2 types here. A single gap, which is a smaller one, with this offensive player basically 1 pass away, and then a double gap, which is a much tougher gap to defend since the offensive player is further, and therefore you don't really have a defender there to help you easily. So you have to know where your double gaps are, and sometimes it's about protecting that at all costs and sending them into a single gap like you see here. Now for deeper layers in the help defense, it's about understanding that basketball is truly a team game, and at the higher level you play at, you won't be able to stop guys 1v1 all game or take away everything. So here you'll see Patty shading Kyrie left, not because he can't go left, but because he knows that they're overloaded with help here, which allows him to literally just take away the drive right towards the middle and get a good contest on a midi. And then for doubles, knowing when a double team is coming allows you to play accordingly. Like here, once he sees he has a teammate flying into double team, he sells out to stop the initial drive this way, because none can really only take a tough shot or get turned right into a defender. Now, getting into the skill side of things, one thing less athletic players must get good at is using angles efficiently to recover, because on defense, space will be created. You will get beat. If you're slower, it's going to happen. If you're shorter, sometimes people will bully their way by you. How are you going to recover, get back in front, or force a tough shot? And this is where angles come into play big time. Rather than taking an aggressive angle, most smarter defenders here will take an angle to where the player is going and beat them to that spot. It's not about closing space ASAP, it's about closing space before they can get into a comfortable scoring position. Other times, recovery-wise, you can peel switch, so if you get fully beat, you allow this help defender to stop your man, and then you jump out to theirs, which is one of my favorites. Especially for smaller guards who are quick and below most players' vision, this can also lead to a lot of steals. And lastly, on recovery, when other players get beat or the offense does a good job of creating an advantage, being able to rotate on the fly and find a new player to defend and close out on is huge, and something less athletic or shorter players must be able to do. Now let's talk defending ball screens. So the goals here are simple. 1, make them use the screen, so don't allow them to reject it. Number 2, try to blow up this screen by getting in this space here. And 3, if you can't, chase them and recover as well as you possibly can to speed them up. A lot of the best smaller guard defenders are incredible at this because they'll use their shorter stature as an advantage to get through this little sliver of space here. And then when they do get around, they're quick getting back and pestering the ball handler. Less athletic players may have a tougher time with this, but the key is getting really good at finding a quality angle here to recover and being physical as hell getting through this screen. They'll often allow for a bit of physicality right Same thing here. With handoffs. If you can get this ball handler pushed back a bit, it blows up everything. If players feel like someone's on their ass coming off of these, they have a tendency to get sped up, which is exactly what we want. Now, in terms of closeouts, this is definitely one of the tougher components, and Lord knows I used to struggle with this. But good strategy and feel here are a must to make up for lack of athleticism or height. So first off, the earlier you recognize this pass going, the quicker you can get there to either contest or create a shorter closeout. So being able to anticipate here is key. Then it's just about finding the balance between contesting a shot and playing for the drive, which of course depends heavily on who the offensive player is, whether they're shooter, non-shooter, and whether they look like they're ready to and looking to shoot versus attack. So keys here. Rather than short choppy steps like we're coached to do pretty much our entire childhood, the best closeouts actually cover ground with longer strides like this. But don't get too elevated. So you'll notice most good defenders here will kind of stay down like they have a ceiling over their head rather than kind of jumping or bounding into it. Also, you got to be able to court map and know where your gaps are and help is to be able to send them into that. And once again, angles come into play big time here. Not taking too sharp of an angle and being willing to adjust based on how the offense plays it. Now with the actual contest, this is something I see a lot of players struggle with and is actually a pretty underrated defensive skill. The goal here for us shorter, less explosive players is not going to be to block it, but to 1, speed up the shot, 2, hinder their vision, and 3, get them moving in other directions worried about the contest. So this requires perfect timing, jumping directly on the pickup of the ball, and when they start that shot motion, not a millisecond before, not a millisecond after, as well as a calculated direction. Most times, players end up jumping straight at the shooter, when in reality a good contest is to the side so you can get closer without getting under them and into their landing space. And then after missed shots, of course, is rebounding. Most people forget, but this is also a huge part of defense. Being able to stay engaged after the shot to get a board is a huge key that most players aren't very consistent with, and this can give you an advantage by just staying in the play mentally and going after it. Now let's talk about something I'm guessing we all struggle with: defending post-ups. So I'll start with this. Sometimes, I'm not saying you'll have to flop, but let's put it this way. You have to take advantage of being the smaller guy and referees knowing that. For example, first play of this Euro Cup final game here, they go straight to a seal play on 5'9" TJ Shorts. Maybe he exaggerates this contact a bit here, but at the end of the day, if you want to get on the floor and play consistently at a high level, you have to do some things like this, especially when you're shorter, and will likely be pissing off defenders and baiting them into dropping shoulders and throwing bows. And it's not flopping when you go hard enough to actually get them to do something like this. Now, in terms of defending it, a big piece is actually fronting the post before the ball even gets there. What fronting does many times is force a lob pass over, which takes significantly more time if they're ballsy enough to even make the pass, and allows for reinforcements to come in to double or steal it from there. Or maybe we get physical, do our work early, and push them out before the catch so that now they have it further from the bucket. Then from there, one of the biggest goals is getting them to move at too high of a speed and turning them into heavy defense, being forced to make a decision. And remember, the baseline is a defender too. So if you know you have help low on the baseline, shading this way a bit may do the trick. Even if you get beat, you send them into a good place to force a tough shot. Other times, it's just about stalling until the double team gets there. But regardless, you want to be proactive here. Rather than allowing them to back you down, whether it's a guard or a big, you want to bait them into turning the way that you want them to turn, so that you can recover from there and anticipate the turn like you see here, as well as staying as upright as possible. Many times, being here is more important than having a hand on them to resist the bumps, because it messes up their vision, makes you seem bigger, and annoys them a bit more, and you're more likely to get a call. Now, lastly, from a skill or IQ standpoint, is understanding tendencies. Taller, more athletic defenders can guard everyone a bit more alike and still be successful. We can't. We got to think critically about every player and every matchup and understand their tendencies, strengths, and weaknesses. So here, for example, Van Vliet knows Sexton is a super downhill player. Doesn't shoot middies very often, and if he gets downhill to his right hand, he's probably going to get to the bucket. So he retreats with an angle that beats him to that spot and rips it out. Whereas here, he knows Cam Thomas wants to raise up into a midi, so he stays glued and dares him to go by into this single gap. Or finally, on a play like this, you'll see that early in the shot clock many times, NBA defenders will give their man space to shoot a mid-range and focus more on recovering to the spot closer to the basket or bringing them into help, simply because most teams don't want midi pull-ups being taken, especially early in a shot clock. Now, most of us aren't in the NBA, but it's a good example of understanding tendencies and goal. Now, none of these techniques will work every time, right? So for us, it's about playing the long game. We got to wear them down over the course of the entire game. It's almost like a 10-round boxing match. We're not going to knock them out in the first quarter, but rather wear them down with physicality and mentality. And part of this is even just playing mind games, like consistently switching your feet, giving them new looks, annoying them a bit, so they can't seem to find a rhythm or any patterns. As well as understanding that you will get scored on, and rather than getting discouraged and allowing your body language to bring you down and show weakness, you just keep going. And of course, this takes elite conditioning and fitness too. Because if you're a smaller guard especially, you'll have a larger load on offense running the team, and if you're a bit less athletic, every movement, stop, and defensive possession is going to take a bit more out of you, and you'll only be on the court as long as you can defend at a high level. So if you're getting cooked in the second and third quarter because you're getting tired, chances are you won't play much. So go out, apply these things, work on them, play a lot of defense, experiment, continue to watch film, and even invest in our lockdown defensive program, which will take you through a 3-month program for all of this. And I promise you guys, you're going to see some big results defensively, which is going to open up the rest of your game. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.